Duke Nathaniel Blackwood took the infant from his wife's arms and announced that she would never hold their daughter again. Before the assembled household, he declared Duchess Eliza mentally unfit and ordered 6-week-old Rose carried to the Dowager Duchess's secluded country estate. For one terrible second, nobody moved. Rose's tiny fingers remained tangled in the lace at Eliza's bodice. The child had been restless throughout the night, yet now her body lay unnaturally limp, her cheek warm against her mother's breast. "Nathaniel, look at her," Eliza said. "She has been given something." Her husband stood beside the nursery hearth, rigid in his black mourning coat. His mother, the Dowager Duchess Augusta, waited near him with the family physician and 2 footmen. Even Clara, Rose's wet nurse, had been summoned to witness the humiliation. "We have looked," Nathaniel replied. "Dr. Harcourt found a sleeping tincture in your cabinet, a bottle bearing my label. That does not mean I prepared it. The cabinet was locked, and 3 people possess copies of the key." Augusta's expression tightened with practiced sorrow. "Still blaming the servants, Eliza? You accused a maid yesterday, and the nurse before that. Now you suggest someone within this family is poisoning your child. I accused no one. I asked why Rose sleeps after every feeding you supervise." Nathaniel's jaw hardened. Eliza saw the moment he chose pride over doubt. He could have ordered the tincture tested. He could have questioned Clara, or examined the nursery ledger Eliza had kept since Rose's birth. Instead, he extended his arms. "Give me the child." Eliza drew Rose closer. 6 years earlier, Nathaniel had admired the knowledge she had learned from her apothecary father. He had once ridden 5 miles through rain to bring her to a tenant's feverish son. But since Rose's birth and Augusta's arrival at Blackwood Hall, every remedy Eliza prepared had become evidence that a tradesman's daughter remained unworthy of a ducal name. "If you take her away before we discover what she has swallowed," Eliza said, "you may kill her." A murmur passed through the servants. Nathaniel's face changed. Her warning had struck him not as fear, but as defiance before his household. "You will not threaten me with my daughter's death." "Daughter, not while you are in this condition." He seized Rose from her. The baby released a weak cry. Eliza lunged instinctively, but one of the footmen caught her arm. Nathaniel saw it happen and did not order the man to release her. That silence wounded more deeply than the grip. Augusta accepted the infant, wrapping Rose inside a cream-colored traveling cloak embroidered with black roses. She pressed her lips to the child's forehead. "Grandmama will keep you safe." Rose did not stir. Eliza forced herself to breathe. Panic would support their accusation. Anger would be called hysteria. She therefore studied everything: Augusta's gloved hands, Harcourt's lowered eyes, the traveling case beside the door, and the silver feeding spoon protruding from Clara's apron. "Where are you taking her?" Eliza asked. "To Greystone Lodge," Nathaniel answered. "My mother leaves within the hour. That road takes half a day. Rose cannot endure it if she has been sedated. Dr. Harcourt will accompany them." Eliza looked at the physician. "What did you find in her pupils?" Harcourt hesitated. Augusta answered for him. "This interrogation is precisely why you require rest." "What did you find?" Eliza repeated. The physician adjusted his spectacles. "The child is merely exhausted. A healthy infant does not become exhausted into silence." Nathaniel stepped between them. "Enough." The word ended the examination, the argument, and Eliza's authority as a mother. He ordered her nursery keys removed and placed her medicinal garden under guard. Until a commission of physicians assessed her sanity, she would remain in the West Apartments with no access to Rose and no right to correspond outside the estate. "You planned this," Eliza whispered. Pain flickered across Nathaniel's face, but it hardened almost immediately into resentment. "I delayed it for 3 days because I hoped you would recover your reason." 3 days? The words struck her with sudden clarity. Rose's unnatural sleeping had also begun 3 days earlier. Before Eliza could answer, Augusta carried the child from the nursery. Nathaniel followed without looking back. Clara remained behind only long enough to collect Rose's linen. As she passed Eliza, she stumbled and caught her mistress's hand. Something cold slid into Eliza's palm, the silver feeding spoon. Clara closed Eliza's fingers around it and whispered, "Do not let them see." Then she hurried after the others. Eliza waited until the door had been locked from the outside. Only then did she approach the window and examine the spoon beneath the gray daylight. A dark residue coated its bowl. She scraped a trace with her thumbnail and smelled it. Honey, fennel, and beneath both, the bitter, unmistakable scent of black henbane. Even a small quantity could plunge an infant into dangerous sleep. Eliza wrapped the spoon in her handkerchief. Whoever had drugged Rose possessed access to the nursery, knowledge of her remedies, and the confidence that Nathaniel would blame his wife without testing the evidence. Outside, Augusta's carriage crossed the courtyard. But Rose was not inside it. Eliza saw the empty interior clearly as a servant shut the door. At that same moment, Clara slipped through the covered passage toward the abandoned family chapel. A male servant carrying a lantern entered ahead of her. Though morning had already broken, Clara waited, then followed him beneath the chapel. In the crypt, she found a child-sized coffin concealed beneath a black cloth. Its brass plate had already been engraved, Lady Rose Blackwood. Below the name was tomorrow's date. Clara lifted the lid and screamed. Inside the coffin lay a wax figure of an infant wrapped in Rose's christening gown. Its face had been carefully molded and painted, but a deep crack ran from the left eye to the tiny mouth. Beneath the figure rested a folded burial certificate, bearing Dr. Harcourt's signature. Clara's scream echoed through the crypt. The servant who had entered before her turned from the far wall. It was not one of the footmen she knew, but a broad-shouldered man dressed in Blackwood livery that fitted poorly across his back. "You should not have come down here," he said. Clara slammed the coffin lid and ran. The man caught the edge of her cloak. The fastening tightened across her throat, but Clara pulled free, leaving the garment in his hands. She reached the staircase and struck the lantern from its hook as she passed. It shattered against the stone. Flames crawled across the spilled oil, cutting the passage between them. Clara climbed through the smoke, burst into the chapel, and barred the crypt door with an iron candlestick. She had to reach Eliza. Across Blackwood Hall, Eliza tested the door of the west apartment for the third time. It remained locked. The empty carriage had already disappeared beyond the gate. If Rose had not left with Augusta, she was still somewhere inside the estate, or had been taken by another route while Eliza watched the courtyard. She unfolded the handkerchief and examined the spoon again. The residue was moist. Rose had received the drug within the past hour. A key turned in the lock. Nathaniel entered alone. "Where is my daughter?" Eliza demanded. "At Greystone Lodge. She was not in the carriage." He paused only briefly. "You could not have seen inside from this window. I saw the empty seat when the door closed. Augusta carried no child into it. My mother left by the east entrance in the smaller coach." Eliza studied him. His answer came too quickly, but he did not appear frightened. Nathaniel believed what he had been told. "Did you see Rose enter that coach?" "That is irrelevant." "No. It is the only relevant question." Nathaniel crossed to the writing desk and placed several documents upon it. "These establish temporary medical supervision over you. Dr. Harcourt and another physician will examine you tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Eliza looked at the papers, then at him. "Why tomorrow?" "Because they could not arrive sooner. Or because someone requires me to remain here until Rose is declared dead." The blood drained from his face. For one instant, she saw the father beneath the Duke. Then his gaze fell upon the spoon in her hand. "What is that?" "The instrument used to drug her." He approached, but Eliza closed her fingers around it. "Give it to me." "You seized my child without examining the evidence I offered." "I will not surrender the only proof I have left." "Proof?" His voice sharpened. "You possess a spoon coated with a substance from your own cabinet. The cabinet where your mother claims she found the tincture. I will not listen to another accusation against her." "That is precisely what whoever planned this expected." Nathaniel stared at her. The space between them seemed filled with every warning he had dismissed since Augusta arrived. The altered feeding times, the servants replaced without Eliza's approval, the nursery ledger that had vanished 2 days earlier. He had noticed some of it. She could tell by the unease behind his anger. But admitting doubt would mean admitting that he had handed Rose to the danger Eliza had described. A violent pounding sounded beyond the door. Nathaniel turned. "Your Grace!" a guard called. "There has been a fire in the chapel." Eliza moved first, but Nathaniel blocked her path. "You remain here. My daughter may be in that chapel. She is at Greystone. Then prove it. Send a rider. Ask the lodgekeeper to describe what Rose is wearing." Nathaniel said nothing. The pounding came again, followed by another voice. "Your Grace, we found the wet nurse near the south passage. She is injured." Nathaniel opened the door. Eliza tried to follow, but 2 guards stood outside. "Bring Clara here," Eliza ordered. Neither man moved. Nathaniel looked between his wife and the guards. At last, he said, "Do as she asks." Clara arrived minutes later, supported by a maid. Soot covered her face, and a red mark encircled her throat. One sleeve had been torn from her dress. She clutched something beneath her apron. When she saw Eliza, she began to weep. "Rose?" Eliza asked. I did not find her. Nathaniel stepped forward. What happened in the chapel? Clara drew out the folded burial certificate she had taken from the coffin. There is a coffin beneath the chapel, Your Grace. It bears Lady Rose's name and tomorrow's date. Nathaniel snatched the document from her. His eyes moved across the page until they reached the physician's signature. Harcourt, he whispered. There was something else inside, Clara said. A wax infant wearing Rose's christening gown. Eliza gripped the bedpost to steady herself. Augusta had personally chosen that gown and removed it from the nursery the previous evening. Nathaniel strode toward the door. I am going to the chapel. No, Eliza said. You are going to find Rose. His hand stopped on the latch. Before he could answer, hoofbeats thundered across the courtyard. A rider wearing the Greystone colors nearly fell while dismounting. The man shouted for the Duke before the front doors had opened. Nathaniel hurried into the corridor. Eliza followed, and this time no guard dared stop her. The messenger stood below them in the entrance hall, rain and sweat darkening his coat. Your Grace, he gasped. Greystone Lodge received your letter, ordering preparations for Lady Rose's arrival. Nathaniel descended one step. Is my daughter there? The messenger looked up at him in confusion. No, Your Grace. No coach has arrived. Behind them, Clara suddenly collapsed. As Eliza turned to catch her, she noticed a fresh puncture wound beneath the wet nurse's torn sleeve. Clara's lips were already turning blue. Eliza caught Clara before her head struck the marble floor. The wet nurse's breathing came in shallow, uneven gasps. A bead of blood marked the puncture beneath her sleeve, surrounded by a rapidly widening patch of reddened skin. Carry her to the morning room, Eliza ordered. Keep her flat and send for hot water. Dr. Harcourt stepped from the library, still wearing the coat he had prepared for the journey. I shall attend her. No. The single word stopped him. Eliza looked at the burial certificate in Nathaniel's hand. Harcourt's signature appeared beneath a declaration that Rose had died from weakness of the lungs, though the child was alive when the document had supposedly been signed. Nathaniel followed her gaze. You certified my daughter's death in advance, he said. Harcourt's face went pale. I signed no such paper. Then you will remain where I can see you. Nathaniel ordered 2 guards to watch the physician. It was the first command he had given that did not strengthen the trap around his wife. Eliza knelt beside Clara in the morning room. The puncture smelled faintly bitter, but the woman's constricted throat and blue lips suggested that the substance had been intended to incapacitate her quickly, rather than imitate a natural illness. Clara, can you hear me? The wet nurse's eyelids fluttered. The man, she whispered. What man? Not our servant. Her body stiffened. Eliza directed the maids to loosen Clara's clothing and keep her airway clear, while a trusted groom fetched an elderly village surgeon who had once worked with Eliza's father. Nathaniel remained near the doorway. Will she live? If the dose was small, you do not know what she was given. No, because the man who attacked her escaped while your guards were keeping me locked upstairs. He accepted the blow without defending himself. A footman hurried in. Your Grace, the Dowager Duchess cannot be found. Nathaniel turned sharply. Search her rooms. They have already been cleared. Her maid is gone as well. Eliza pressed a folded cloth against Clara's wound. Your mother left in an empty carriage to make us believe she had taken Rose to Greystone. She then returned by another entrance, or never entered the carriage at all. Nathaniel's expression tightened. You think my mother stole her own grandchild? I think she helped someone remove Rose from this house. Why? That is what we must discover. Nathaniel ordered every gate closed, every carriage inspected, and riders sent along the roads leading from the estate. He also commanded the steward to bring him the household movement book. The steward, Mr. Pritchard, arrived carrying a heavy ledger. His hands trembled as he opened it. No vehicle left without authorization, Your Grace. Eliza looked at the page. The entries were written in neat columns. Augusta's carriage, the Greystone messenger, 2 delivery carts, and a wagon carrying soiled linen to the riverside washhouse. The linen wagon, she said. When did it leave? Shortly after the Dowager's carriage. Who authorized it? Pritchard traced the line with one finger. Her Grace did. Nathaniel glanced at Eliza. She did not need to remind him which duchess the steward meant. The authorization bore Eliza's name. It is forged, she said. Pritchard swallowed. The kitchen maid delivered the note. It carried your private seal. My seal was taken with my keys. Nathaniel stared at the entry. When he had stripped Eliza of control over the household, he had placed her keys and seal in Augusta's possession. His own order had provided everything required to move Rose through the gates under Eliza's authority. "Which road does the wagon take?" he demanded. "To the river first," Pritchard replied. "Then north to Milford." Nathaniel dispatched 6 mounted men after it. Eliza turned back to Clara. The woman's breathing had steadied, but her fingers moved weakly against Eliza's wrist. "What is it?" Eliza asked. Clara opened her eyes. "The coffin," she murmured. The gown was not Rose's. Eliza bent closer. "It looked the same," Clara continued, "but the embroidery was old. The thread had faded." Nathaniel approached. "Whose was it?" Clara struggled to speak. "Your sister's." Nathaniel went still. Lady Margaret Blackwood had died in infancy 32 years earlier. Augusta had always said the child succumbed to a fever before her baptism. No portrait existed, and the family vault contained only a small sealed coffin. Eliza looked toward the chapel windows. "Show me Margaret's tomb." Nathaniel hesitated. Clara had nearly been killed beneath that chapel, and Rose was still missing. Yet the old christening gown connected the present crime to a death Augusta had concealed for more than 3 decades. They crossed the grounds with 4 armed guards. Smoke lingered inside the chapel, but the fire had burned itself out against the stone walls. The attacker was gone. In the crypt, the child-sized coffin prepared for Rose stood open. The wax figure and forged certificate remained, but the old gown had disappeared. Nathaniel led Eliza to a small marble tomb, bearing Margaret's name. Its surface was dusty, except around one corner, where the stone had recently been disturbed. A guard inserted an iron bar beneath the lid. Together, the men shifted it aside. There was no coffin inside, only a wooden document box. Nathaniel lifted it out and broke the corroded lock. Within lay a faded baptismal register, several letters tied with black ribbon, and a miniature portrait of a dark-haired young woman holding a living infant. The woman was Augusta. On the back, someone had written, "Augusta Blackwood and her daughter Margaret, aged 3 years." Nathaniel read the inscription twice. "My sister did not die as an infant." Eliza opened the baptismal register. A later entry had been pressed between its pages in different ink. It recorded Margaret's marriage at 17, and the birth of a son 1 year later. That son, if still alive, possessed a claim connected to the Blackwood family settlement. Hoofbeats sounded outside. One of Nathaniel's riders rushed into the crypt. They had found the abandoned linen wagon near the river. Inside it was Rose's empty carrying basket, a bottle of black henbane, and a trail of blood leading toward the water. The blood beside the abandoned wagon belonged to an adult. Eliza knew it before the search party reached the river. The drops were too large and too widely spaced to have come from an infant. Someone had been injured while carrying Rose toward the water. Nathaniel ordered the men to search downstream. Eliza examined the wagon instead. Rose's basket remained inside, along with the bottle of black henbane and a torn strip from Augusta's gray traveling dress. Beneath the driver's seat, she found traces of blue clay. "There is no blue clay on the road to Milford," she said. One of the grooms nodded. "But there is near the old ferry crossing." Nathaniel immediately turned his horse east. They found the ferryman bound inside his cottage. After being freed, he described 2 men who had crossed with an older woman and a sleeping infant. One of the men had blood on his hand. "Was the woman there willingly?" Eliza asked. The ferryman shook his head. She looked frightened. One man held her arm. Augusta had helped remove Rose from the hall, but her accomplices had betrayed her. The ferryman also remembered their destination, Ashcombe House, an abandoned hunting lodge on the opposite bank. Nathaniel called for the boat. Eliza caught his rein. "If they see a dozen armed men crossing, they may harm Rose." "You expect me to wait?" "I expect you to think before acting. That is what you refused to do this morning." His face tightened, but he did not argue. They sent 2 men upstream while Eliza, Nathaniel, and a single guard crossed in the ferryman's small boat. At Ashcombe House, the doors stood open. Inside, they found Augusta tied to a chair. Her face was bruised, and blood marked one sleeve. When she saw Nathaniel, relief gave way to shame. "Where is Rose?" he demanded. "Adrian took her." The name matched the baptismal record. Adrian Vale was Margaret Blackwood's son. The grandson Augusta had hidden for years. "You told me Eliza was dangerous," Nathaniel said. "You placed the tincture in her cabinet." Augusta lowered her eyes. "Adrian promised he only wanted Rose removed temporarily. He said you would never recognize his rights unless the succession appeared threatened." "There are no rights to the dukedom through Margaret," Nathaniel said. "Not the title, the western lands. Your grandfather placed them in a separate family settlement." Eliza stepped closer. Why prepare a coffin? Augusta began to cry. To prove Rose had died while under Eliza's care. Adrian intended to force Nathaniel to acknowledge him as beneficiary of the Western estates. He said the child would be returned afterward. You believed a man who planned my daughter's false burial? I wanted Margaret's son restored to the family, and you were willing to destroy me to accomplish it. Augusta had no answer. A baby's weak cry sounded somewhere beyond the house. Eliza ran toward it and found Rose's cream cloak lying beside an open rear door. The child was already gone, but the fabric remained warm. Pinned to it was a note. Nathaniel read the demand aloud. Before midnight, he must publicly recognize Adrian's claim to the Western lands. Eliza must sign away control of Rose's maternal trust and accept permanent confinement for insanity. If either refused, the empty coffin beneath the chapel would no longer remain empty. At the bottom, Adrian had added one final line. Ask your mother what truly happened to Margaret before you decide whether I am bluffing. Eliza read the ransom note again while Augusta sat trembling beside the cold hearth. Something about Adrian's claim did not fit. She opened the baptismal register and compared its dates. Margaret had been 3 years old when the miniature was painted. She married at 17 and gave birth the following year. Eliza looked at Augusta. Adrian Vale is 14. Nathaniel stared at the register. A boy did not organize this. Augusta's face changed. When did you last see your grandson? Eliza asked. I have never seen him. We communicated through a solicitor. Which solicitor? Mr. Silas Crane. He brought me Adrian's letters. Eliza felt the shape of the deception emerging. Augusta had not conspired with her grandson. She had conspired with a man speaking in his name. Crane knew you wanted to repair what happened to Margaret, Eliza said. He used that guilt to gain access to this house. Augusta covered her mouth. Nathaniel's voice was cold. Tell us what happened to my sister. Their father had discovered Margaret's secret marriage to an army clerk, Thomas Vale. Because the Western estates could pass through the female line under an older settlement, he feared Margaret's husband would control valuable land. He had the marriage challenged, sent Margaret abroad, and separated her from her infant son. Augusta had remained silent to protect the Blackwood reputation. Margaret died in France 5 years later, Augusta said. Adrian was raised by his father's family. Mr. Crane contacted me last winter and claimed the boy was destitute. And you gave him money, Eliza said. More than once. Nathaniel turned away in disgust. Then you helped him enter my household. I believed I was helping Margaret's child. You planted poison in Eliza's cabinet. Augusta lowered her head. Crane said Rose would only sleep for a few hours. He told me Eliza would be confined temporarily and that no one would be harmed. Eliza's anger remained steady and clear. You watched your son take my child from my arms. You heard me warn that Rose had been drugged, and you continued. Augusta began to apologize, but Eliza stopped her. Your regret cannot find my daughter. She examined the ransom note beneath the window. Its paper bore a faint watermark shaped like a crown above 3 reeds. Eliza recognized it from the account books used at the Western estate. Crane obtained this paper from Marsh Mill, she said. It belongs to the land he wants Nathaniel to surrender. The mill stood 2 hours away by the fastest road. More importantly, an abandoned manor nearby contained the old estate office, where the original settlement documents were stored. He needs the original deed, Nathaniel said. And witnesses, Eliza added. Our signatures alone are insufficient. He will bring us somewhere he can produce both. A knock sounded at the door. A frightened kitchen boy entered, carrying a parcel left at the gate by an unknown rider. Inside lay Rose's white-knitted cap and a small glass feeding bottle. Eliza opened it and smelled diluted goat's milk mixed with black henbane. She has been drugged again, Nathaniel said. Yes, but less heavily. Crane needs her alive until we sign. A note beneath the bottle ordered them to come alone to Marsh Mill at 10 that night. Nathaniel was to bring the Western estate seal. Eliza was to bring the key to Rose's trust box. Nathaniel called for horses. Eliza caught his sleeve. Crane expects you to surrender because you are frightened. He expects me to obey because you have already declared me powerless. What alternative do we have? We give him what he expects to see, not what he demands. She instructed Pritchard to prepare false copies of the estate transfer and asked the village surgeon to confirm that Clara could safely identify her attacker later. Then she sent a trusted maid to the county magistrate with the forged burial certificate and ransom note. Nathaniel watched her restore order to the household he had taken from her that morning. I should have listened, he said quietly. Yes, There was no comfort in her answer. Before leaving, Eliza returned to the nursery. Behind Rose's cradle, she found the empty space where the trust box had stood. Its key was still hidden inside Eliza's locket, but the box itself had already been stolen. When she told Nathaniel, he searched Augusta's recovered belongings. Among them was a receipt signed by Silas Crane. He had removed Rose's trust box 3 days earlier, under authority granted by the Duke. At the bottom of the receipt appeared Nathaniel's unmistakable signature. Nathaniel stared at his signature on Crane's receipt. "I signed it with the household orders Augusta brought me," he said. "She claimed the box contained old nursery accounts. You did not read the document." No. His honesty did not lessen the damage. Eliza placed the receipt with the forged burial certificate and ransom note. Crane's plan had succeeded because Nathaniel had trusted his rank, his mother, and his own judgment more than the wife who understood the household. "When Rose is safe," Eliza said, "you will revoke the order declaring me unfit, at once. And you will not decide what happens to our marriage." Nathaniel met her eyes. "I understand. No, you are only beginning to." They reached Marsh Mill shortly before 10. Nathaniel carried the false estate transfer beneath his coat. Eliza wore the trust box key inside her locket. At her insistence, their guards remained hidden beyond the tree line. The magistrate had not yet arrived. The mill appeared deserted, but candlelight glowed behind its upper windows. As Eliza and Nathaniel entered, the heavy door closed behind them. Silas Crane emerged from beside the silent machinery. He was the broad-shouldered man Clara had seen in the chapel, now dressed in an expensive dark coat. 2 armed accomplices stood behind him. Rose's stolen trust box rested upon a table. Above them, on the wooden gallery, a cradle stood beside the railing. Rose lay inside it. Eliza heard her daughter's faint, broken cry. "Bring her down," she said. Crane smiled. "Once the documents are signed." Nathaniel placed the false transfer on the table. "You used a child to steal land that does not belong to you. I used the Blackwoods' own methods. Your grandfather erased Margaret's marriage. Your mother buried her existence. You can find your wife with a physician's paper. I merely learned from your family. You are not Adrian Vale," Eliza said. His smile faded. "No. Adrian is 14, and likely knows nothing of this. You found Margaret's history while managing Augusta's legal affairs, then invented letters from her grandson." Crane's eyes hardened. "The boy will receive enough money to remain grateful. You never intended to restore him. You intended to control the western estates yourself." Nathaniel moved toward the gallery stairs, but one accomplice raised a pistol. Crane tapped the trust box. "The key, Duchess." Eliza opened her locket and removed it. "Let me examine Rose first. You are in no position to bargain. You have given her too much henbane. If she dies before the trust papers are executed, the money remains under its existing trustees. You need my signature and a living beneficiary." Crane glanced toward the gallery. That brief hesitation confirmed Rose was in danger. He allowed Eliza to climb the stairs under guard. Each step brought the bitter scent of henbane more strongly. Rose's skin was pale, her breathing slow, but she responded when Eliza touched her foot. "Hold on, my darling," Eliza whispered. A folded document lay beneath the cradle mattress. Eliza pulled one corner free and saw Dr. Harcourt's signature beside her own forged name. It was not merely a transfer of Rose's trust. It was a confession stating that Eliza had poisoned her daughter and fabricated the kidnapping during a fit of madness. Crane intended to recover the child, blame Eliza for everything, and present himself as the man who had saved the Blackwood heir. Below, Nathaniel unfolded the false estate deed. Crane immediately noticed the missing legal ribbon. "You brought a copy." His accomplice struck Nathaniel across the face and forced him to his knees. Crane seized a lantern from the wall. "You imagined hidden guards would rescue you once the magistrate arrived," he said. Unfortunately, the message sent to him carried the wrong destination. He threw the lantern onto the account books. Flames spread across the table and climbed the dry wooden wall. Eliza lifted Rose from the cradle, but the guard blocked the stairs. Behind her, the old gallery railing overlooked the turning channel that powered the mill. Crane's second accomplice pulled a lever. The great wheel shuddered into motion. As the floor began vibrating beneath Eliza's feet, a burning beam fell across the only staircase. Smoke rolled across the gallery as the mill wheel gathered speed. Eliza held Rose against her chest and searched for another way down. Behind the cradle, a narrow maintenance platform ran toward the loading loft. The boards were old, but the fire had not reached them. The guard moved to seize her. Eliza kicked the empty cradle into his path. It struck his knees, sending him against the railing. Before he recovered, she stepped onto the platform with Rose secured inside her cloak. Below, Nathaniel drove his shoulder into the man holding him. They fell beside the burning table. Papers scattered into the flames, but Nathaniel reached the control lever and pulled it back. The machinery slowed. Eliza crossed the platform one careful step at a time. Rose's breathing had become dangerously faint. At the loading loft, Eliza found a small window overlooking a wagon ramp. "Open the outer doors!" she shouted. The guards hidden beyond the trees had already seen the fire. They broke through the mill entrance as Nathaniel dragged one of Crane's accomplices away from the burning wall. Crane seized the trust box and ran through a rear passage. Nathaniel started after him, then heard Rose's weak cry. He stopped. For the first time that day, he chose his child over the estate. The guards carried Eliza and Rose down from the loft. Outside, Eliza laid the infant on her cloak and examined her. Rose still responded to touch, but the henbane had slowed her breathing and left her unable to feed. The village surgeon arrived minutes later. Under Eliza's direction, they kept Rose warm and monitored her breathing while the drug gradually weakened. Nathaniel knelt opposite his wife. Will she survive? Yes, if no one gives her anything else. Rose's fingers closed weakly around Eliza's thumb. Nathaniel lowered his head, but Eliza felt no relief strong enough to erase what he had done. Rose was back in her arms because Eliza had resisted him, not because he had protected her. Behind them, part of the mill roof collapsed. The original trust papers and forged confession were gone. Crane had escaped with the trust box, while his captured accomplice refused to speak. Hoofbeats approached along the road. Eliza expected the magistrate. Instead, 4 county constables entered the yard with Dr. Harcourt seated in their carriage. The physician had escaped Blackwood Hall during the confusion. The senior constable unfolded a warrant. Duchess Eliza Blackwood, you are charged with poisoning Lady Rose, assaulting her nurse, and setting fire to Marsh Mill while attempting to conceal your removal of funds from the child's trust. Nathaniel Rose. Those accusations are false. The complaint bears your signature, Your Grace. The constable handed him the medical petition Nathaniel had signed that morning, the document declaring Eliza unstable and dangerous to her daughter. Attached to it was the forged burial certificate and a statement from Harcourt claiming Eliza had threatened Rose's life. Nathaniel tore the papers from his hands. I withdraw every accusation. You may challenge them before the county court. Until then, the warrant remains valid. 2 constables approached Eliza. Nathaniel stepped between them, but Eliza placed Rose carefully into the surgeon's arms. No, she said. Do not use your title to hide what your signature created. She extended her wrists. The constable fastened the restraints. As Eliza was led toward the carriage, Harcourt refused to meet her eyes. But she noticed fresh ink on his right cuff, the same distinctive blue-black ink used on Crane's ransom note. Before the door closed, Eliza looked directly at him. You did not merely copy Crane's documents, she said. You wrote them. Harcourt's face betrayed him. Then the carriage carried Eliza away, while Nathaniel remained in the burning mill yard, holding the evidence of how easily he had helped condemn his own wife. Eliza spent the night in a locked room above the county courthouse. Nathaniel offered to secure her release under his protection. She refused. Accepting would allow him to appear as the generous husband rescuing the wife he had condemned. I will leave under my own name, she told the constable, or I will remain here. At the preliminary hearing the following morning, Dr. Harcourt repeated his accusation before 3 magistrates. He claimed Eliza had become irrational after childbirth, drugged Rose, and invented the kidnapping to conceal her actions. Nathaniel stood before the crowded room. My petition created the foundation for these charges, he said. I signed it without properly examining the evidence. My wife warned me that our daughter had been drugged, and I chose not to believe her. A murmur moved through the gallery. Harcourt protested that Nathaniel had been manipulated. Eliza then asked to examine the physician's written statement. She placed it beside Crane's ransom note and the forged burial certificate. All 3 were written with the same uncommon blue-black ink, she said. It contains powdered indigo and iron salts. Dr. Harcourt carries it on his cuff. That proves nothing, Harcourt replied. Then explain why Rose's burial certificate was completed before she disappeared, he faltered. The courtroom doors opened. Clara entered with the village surgeon supporting her. Though still weak, she identified Harcourt as the man who had changed Rose's feeding mixture during the previous 3 nights. She also testified that Crane's accomplice had punctured her arm after she discovered the coffin. The captured man from the mill was brought forward next. Crane had abandoned him in the fire, and loyalty had disappeared with the smoke. He admitted that Harcourt supplied the henbane and forged the medical evidence. In exchange, Crane had promised him a position managing the western estates. The magistrates ordered Harcourt detained and released Eliza without conditions. Nathaniel approached her outside the courtroom. "You are free." "No," she said. "I am merely no longer imprisoned." Before he could answer, Pritchard arrived carrying a bundle of documents recovered from Crane's London office. Among them were Augusta's payments, drafts of Adrian's fabricated letters, and copies of withdrawals authorized with Nathaniel's signature. Crane had stolen money from the western estates for months. One document was more urgent than the rest, a public notice announcing that the western settlement would be transferred to Adrian Vale at Blackwood Hall the following afternoon. Local landowners, tenants, and trustees had already been invited to witness the declaration. "He intends to appear as Adrian's legal representative," Eliza said. "Once the transfer is witnessed, he will flee with the original trust box and claim Nathaniel acted willingly. Then I will cancel the gathering," Nathaniel replied. "No, if you cancel it privately, Crane disappears, and the public record remains uncertain. He framed me before your household in the county. We expose him before the same witnesses." Nathaniel understood what she required. "And I must tell them what I did. Every part of it." That evening, a search of Crane's office produced another discovery. Hidden behind a false wall was a frightened 14-year-old boy. Adrian Vale had been imprisoned there for 6 months while Crane forged letters in his name. The boy carried one possession, a sealed letter written by Margaret before her death. It stated that the western estates were meant to support her son, but appointed the Blackwood Duchess as independent trustee if the family ever tried to seize them. Under the settlement's wording, that trustee was now Eliza. Crane had not targeted her merely because she was easy to blame. He needed her declared insane because she was the only person with legal authority to stop him. Before they could secure Margaret's letter, a stone shattered the courthouse window. An attached message landed at Eliza's feet. Crane still held the original trust box. Unless Eliza attended the public gathering alone, he would burn every document proving her authority and reveal evidence that Nathaniel's late father had arranged Margaret's disappearance. Blackwood Hall was filled the following afternoon with trustees, tenants, magistrates, and neighboring landowners. The same servants who had watched Eliza lose her daughter now stood along the walls. At the center table sat Rose's stolen trust box and a stack of documents bearing the Blackwood seal. Silas Crane waited beside them. He appeared calm when Eliza entered alone. Nathaniel remained out of sight, as did Adrian and the magistrates who had agreed to observe before acting. "You made the sensible choice," Crane said. "No. I came so everyone could hear the truth." Crane addressed the room before she could continue. He claimed to represent Adrian Vale, the forgotten grandson of Augusta Blackwood. According to his documents, Nathaniel had voluntarily surrendered the western estates as restitution for the family's treatment of Margaret. Then Nathaniel entered. "The documents are fraudulent," he announced. Before the assembled witnesses, he admitted that he had signed Crane's earlier authorizations without reading them. He also confessed that he had removed Eliza from the nursery, ignored her warnings, and declared her mentally unfit without an independent examination. "My wife did not endanger our daughter," he said. "I did, by giving authority to those who used my pride against her." Crane tried to dismiss the confession as a marital dispute. Eliza stepped toward the table. "You claim to act for Adrian Vale. Where is he?" "Abroad." The doors opened, and the 14-year-old Adrian entered with the magistrates. Crane's composure finally broke. Adrian identified the solicitor who had imprisoned him and forged letters in his name. Pritchard then presented the records recovered from Crane's office, including Augusta's payments and the false estate withdrawals. Crane backed toward the trust box. "These papers prove nothing without the original settlement," he said. "And that document is inside here." He pulled a pistol from beneath his coat. 2 armed men among the guests revealed themselves as his accomplices and barred the doors. Crane poured oil from a lamp across the trust box. "If I burn this, Margaret's son loses his claim, the Duchess loses control of the trust, and Blackwood's confession becomes nothing more than a frightened man's words." Eliza did not move. "You will not burn it." "Why not?" "Because you did not steal these estates merely to destroy them." Crane pressed the pistol against the box. "Give me the key." Eliza removed it from her locket and placed it on the table. He unlocked the box and lifted the lid. Inside lay Rose's trust papers, the original Western settlement, and a sealed packet marked with Margaret's name. Crane seized the packet. Augusta cried out from the gallery. "That is Margaret's final letter." "No," Eliza said. "The letter Adrian carried was her final statement. That packet contains something Crane never expected us to find." Crane tore it open. Several receipts and private medical reports fell onto the table. They showed that Margaret had not died from fever in France. She had been repeatedly drugged and confined under another name. The physician responsible had been Silas Crane's father. Crane's scheme had not begun as an attempt to restore Adrian's inheritance. His family had helped steal it decades earlier, and he was now destroying the remaining evidence. One of the magistrates ordered him to surrender. Crane overturned the lamp. Flames spread across the oil-soaked table. He grabbed the original settlement and ran toward the chapel passage while his accomplices blocked the witnesses. Nathaniel moved to pursue him, but Eliza reached the burning trust box first. Rose's documents were still inside. As Eliza pulled them from the flames, she discovered that the most important page, the clause naming her trustee, had already been cut from the settlement. Crane carried it toward the same crypt where the coffin prepared for Rose was waiting. And this time, he had taken Augusta with him. Eliza followed Crane into the chapel passage with Nathaniel, the magistrates, and several guards close behind. Smoke drifted through the corridor. At the crypt entrance, Crane held Augusta by the arm, pressing his pistol beneath her jaw. In his other hand was the missing settlement clause. "Stay back," he warned. Nathaniel stopped, but Eliza continued until she stood beneath the chapel arch. "You cannot escape with her," she said. "I do not need to. I only need this page destroyed." He held the document above a burning candle. Augusta looked at Eliza, shame and terror competing across her face. "Tell them," Crane ordered her. "Tell them you hired me to remove the child. I asked you to help Adrian," Augusta said. "I planted the tincture and supported Eliza's confinement, but I never authorized Rose's kidnapping or murder. You authorized enough." Crane's words exposed the method he had used from the beginning. He had not needed Augusta to approve the entire crime. He only needed her guilt, Nathaniel's signatures, Harcourt's medical authority, and the family's habit of hiding scandal. Eliza took another step. "Burn the clause if you wish." Crane stared at her. "The Western settlement was executed in counterparts," she continued. "The trustees retained another copy. Pritchard recovered it this morning and delivered it to the magistrates." One of the magistrates lifted a sealed document. Crane's face collapsed. Destroying the page in his hand would change nothing. Margaret's son remained a beneficiary, and Eliza remained independent trustee. Crane lowered the paper toward the flame anyway. Augusta drove her heel into his foot and pulled away. The pistol fired into the stone ceiling. Nathaniel seized his mother while the guards forced Crane to the floor. Eliza caught the burning edge of the settlement clause with a woolen altar cloth and smothered it. Only one corner had been damaged. The document survived. So did the evidence inside Rose's trust box. The magistrates recovered forged withdrawals, false medical certificates, payments to Harcourt, and letters showing how Crane had invented Adrian's correspondence. Clara identified Crane as the man from the chapel, while his captured accomplices confirmed that he had ordered the kidnapping and prepared Rose's false burial. Dr. Harcourt eventually admitted that he had supplied the henbane, forged the burial certificate, and signed Eliza's confession in advance. He had expected Crane to make Rose appear dead long enough to transfer the trust and then return her under a false identity. Crane had never intended to return her. Once the land and money were secured, Rose's death would have been made permanent, and Eliza would have remained confined as the woman blamed for killing her. Crane was charged with kidnapping, fraud, forgery, attempted arson, and conspiracy to murder. Harcourt faced charges for poisoning, falsifying medical evidence, and assisting the abduction. Their accomplices received lesser sentences in exchange for testimony. Augusta was not spared, because she had eventually helped them. Before the same household that had watched Eliza's humiliation, the dowager confessed that she had planted the tincture, lied about Eliza's behavior, and persuaded Nathaniel to separate mother and child. She surrendered her household authority and moved permanently to a small dower residence. A substantial portion of her private allowance was placed into an independently managed fund for Adrian. The boy received his lawful interest in the Western estates, but no title he did not possess, and no control Crane had falsely promised him. Under Eliza's trusteeship, he was given an education and the freedom to decide whether he wanted any relationship with the Blackwoods. Nathaniel's reckoning came publicly. He summoned the servants, tenants, trustees, and county officials to Blackwood Hall. Standing in the same nursery where he had declared Eliza insane, He withdrew every accusation against her. "I took our daughter from her mother without proof," he said. "I ignored Eliza's knowledge because accepting it required me to question my own authority. I signed documents I did not read, allowed others to use my name, and punished my wife for resisting the danger I enabled." He dismissed every servant involved in Augusta's conspiracy, restored Eliza's control over her medicinal garden, and endowed a clinic in her name without retaining authority over its work. More importantly, he signed a deed of separation giving Eliza an independent residence, income, and control of the property secured through her marriage settlement. He agreed that Rose would live with her and promised not to challenge the arrangement. Nathaniel did not ask for forgiveness. When they stood alone after the signing, he said only, "I loved you, but when love demanded trust, I chose power." Eliza looked at the man she had once believed would stand beside her against the world. "You loved the version of me that never contradicted you." He accepted the truth without protest. Months later, Eliza opened a small clinic on the Western estate. Clara recovered and became its household manager. Adrian studied nearby and visited when he wished. Rose grew stronger, suffering no lasting harm from the drug. Nathaniel wrote regularly about estate matters, but never used the letters to plead for reconciliation. He corrected the public record, paid for the harm his choices had caused, and remained separated from the family he had failed to protect. On the clinic's opening day, he arrived before the tenants carrying Rose. The gathered crowd fell silent. It was a mirror of the morning he had torn the child from Eliza's arms. But this time, he did not issue an order. Nathaniel placed Rose gently into her mother's embrace. Then he handed Eliza the nursery keys, stepped back, and waited for her decision. Eliza kissed her daughter's forehead and walked through the clinic doors without inviting him to follow.